Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and today we're looking at Slimefoot and Squee, Aristocrats. This deck comes to us from Gamusino, who says, the overall strategy is getting creatures on the board, sacrificing them, and the commander to reanimate, repeating over and over for success. The main reason I don't have that many big beefy reanimator targets is because it works more as an Aristocrats deck that can abuse the graveyard for massive card advantage. And they have a few things about a few cards they want me to take a look at, and they mention that there's tags. Their budget is cards under $5 more or less, but all the cards you can see that are way more expensive, they just proxy. Sounds great, I can definitely work with that. And I'm excited. Slimefoot and Squee is a combination that I've had literally on my desk for a while now. I do really like green and Aristocrats, and having access to red as well kind of empowers it a little further. And I think they're a lot of fun. Both Squee and Slimefoot are great characters. Before we get any further, I will say that I did notice a few decks I've been looking at lately that you guys have sent to me are either marked as private or they've been deleted. Just be aware, you've sent me a deck and the deck has been deleted or moved or is marked private. I can't work on it and I have to just, strike it off the list. So make sure anything you send me isn't on private, and then we can work on it. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. Alright, so who is Slimefoot and Squee, and why are they the head of our Aristocrats deck? Well, Slimefoot and Squee are really, really cool. A very cool pairing of two very cool legendary creatures that I think work really well together. So they're Jund, that's black, red, green, no additional mana, 3 mana, 3/3 fungus goblin. They have two abilities. The first one is whenever they enter the battlefield or attack, you get a 1/1 Saproling creature token, which once again makes them a Titan if you've heard me using that term again, which generally means the triggers are on ETB and attack. And then their main ability is for 1 black, red, green, and sacrificing a Saproling, you return Slimefoot and Squee and up to one other target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. Now, this is only activated if they're in the graveyard, so a big part of this deck is throwing Slimefoot and Squee into the graveyard and then pulling them back out by sacrificing the Saproling they originally made. Very, very straightforward, very, very strong, and then generally you get to decide what kind of reanimation thing you want to do, and here we have Aristocrats, which I really, really like. So now we know this commander, let's take a look at the deck itself. And generally, I like the deck. I think it's very well built. I think it has a lot of really, really fun cards. I believe, if I had it open, I didn't. The deck builder, Gamusino, has everything set up by tags. So if you want to take a look, you can set it up by tags to see what they were thinking when they were building the deck. I just never use that because this makes a lot more sense to my brain. And sometimes, tags can be tricky because what you think is tagged under one thing, I might think is tagged under another. So outside of that, the deck is very, very creature heavy, 43 creatures, and we can see the curve is pretty straightforward, a little chonky, if that makes sense, like everything is kind of like plateaued, but still very, very nice, 2 being our highest mana cost, and lots of 1-drops, which I also like. And the deck is good. If I had a general kind of like, when I look at this, what do I think? I think it's a little too, maybe not ambitious. I think it's forgotten its fundamentals. Let me try to explain what that means. So we have a lot of cards that are very strong and cards that work in very, very specific ways, from like Dinosaur Egg to, these are cards that were suggested, specifically these two of Mind Leech Ghoul and where's the other one? It's the spider, a Skyfisher spider. We have cards that have a lot of specific utility or work really, really well in specific situations. We have Bankrupt in Blood, we've got, Rushed Rebirth. And though these cards are really, really good, we're kind of getting maybe a little too in the weeds, we're kind of getting a little crazy with it. And I think we're losing some fundamental strengths of the deck by doing this. Like, there's a lot of strength here, but the strategy is kind of being pulled into a bunch of directions that I feel like is kind of impeding its ability to just do what it wants. So that in mind, I'm going to go through, I'm going to pick out some of these cards that I think are kind of indicative. No, my goodness, English is a hard language. It is an example, let's say, of what I'm trying to talk about. So let's get through, let's go just through creatures, because that's the biggest thing, and we'll look at the others right after. Planeswalkers, we'll take a second here. Vraska's great, no problems there. All right, creatures. Some of these are set as different costs. I'm not sure why, but we'll get to them as we get to. So Elish Mystic is a really strange card in this deck because it is I believe the only mana dork, or the only traditional mana dork. I know Wild Cantor is technically a dork, but not really what we consider. And that's just kind of strange to me. I don't understand why just the one. Don't get me wrong, I think the ability to play like Birds of Paradise to get Slimefoot and Squee out turn 2 is really, really strong, and we should try to do that. Elish Mystic isn't quite there, so it's just a card that kind of stands out. I'm not quite sure why it's there. After that, Greedy Freebooter. This is under, like, I believe the Sacrifice tag. I wonder why. I wish it would give me what, like, somewhere here say what tag you put it under, but this is also kind of a card that I find is a little clunky. This is not really the card you want to be sacrificing. It gives you just a little bit of value. And though, you know, I do like this in the idea of Aristocrats, it's only good for one sacrifice. It's never going to be the creature reanimate. So a little clunky there as well. Shambling Ghast I think is much better. Haywire Might I think is perfectly fine. Skirk Prospector, once again, we're not really playing enough goblins. I do understand you could play this, sacrifice it to itself, play this, sacrifice it to itself. Is that really where you want to be? I don't particularly think so. We're not generating enough goblins to get mana ahead, and though this does sacrifice our commander, I do find there's better ways we can do that. We have both Carrion Feeder and Viscera Seer. So I don't think we really need this, so it stands out as well. Stitcher Supplier is great. This just the Seer is fantastic. Wild Cantor once again feels a little off. I do like this as a turn 1 mana dork, so we can guarantee Slimefoot on turn 2, Slimefoot and Squee. But outside of that, I don't really think this makes a lot of sense. But I do really like its ability, so I think this is fine. Blood Artist is great. Dinosaur Egg is interesting. This feels very strange in this deck. It's kind of like a sacrifice this, then you get to discover. I think that's fine, but at the same time, with how this deck is, the majority of it is already under 3 mana to begin with, and as we add more counters, we're actually kind of diluting the cards we're going to get from it. So this just kind of gets to be, you know, sacrifice, like when this creature is sacrificed, you know, you put a you just put a card in your hand or on the battlefield. I think that's fine. It's just kind of okay and doesn't really further our game plan, nor is it really something we want to reanimate. So cool card, little clunky, and I think you're going to be hearing that a lot coming from here. Dusk Legion Zealot is fine, generally seen as a redundant piece, and I don't like it that it's a redundant piece in a deck where we don't have all of our basics. I mean, our fundamental cards, which is a lot of my additions will be the fundamentals, but so it feels a bit like weaker compared to everything else, but it can still definitely stay in. Jury, I think, is great. Kroxa, I think, is okay. Kroxa already has the means to reanimate itself, and though I do like the way it pressures all of our opponents, it is kind of a solo card. I think it's fine here, and I think we should play it, but it doesn't. It's a little clunky in the strategy. Mind Leech Ghoul, I think this is good. You were saying that you don't really like it. I think its ability to exile a card from each opponent is more than enough for this to be good, and I do think this could generally see more play. However, much like I talk about Burglar Rat cards, where you play a card and then each opponent discards a card, the first version of this ability is the weakest. you want to use this ability 2 or 3 times to really get at the good stuff in their hands. Of course, the bonus is Exile's much more powerful than Discard because they can't take advantage of it as easily. However, in order to do this multiple times, we have to keep playing Mind Leech Ghoul because it's the only version of this ability that we have, and we keep having to exploit a creature, so we are technically not getting as much advantage as possible. Though the exploit gives us aristocrat triggers, it's kind of like a back and forth. I like it, and I think you should keep it, but it is kind of a tough one in certain situations. Priest of the Forgotten Gods is great. Sakura Tribe Elder, it's fine. I guess it is an aristocrats trigger, but feels kind of, once again, not really on theme as much. Like we won't be reanimating this creature, right? So we're just kind of taking advantage that it's one extra sacrifice. Whereas, traditionally we just want to sacrifice this right away to get the land by the end of the turn cycle. So if you don't have aristocrat cards, you're just gonna use it as intended. So once again, cool card, little weak in the deck. Shriek Maw, fine. I do like this being able to be repeatedly reanimated to keep getting the effect. However, in Commander, this non-black, non-artifact creature kind of gets tricky because a lot of people play multicolor commanders, so black is one you're going to see, so it's harder to hit, and a lot of people do like artifacts, so once again, a bit tougher to find a target. However, decent card, especially keeping a 3/2 fear, no problem there. Zulport, Aristocrat staple, very nice. Braids, very, very strong card. Judith, another Aristocrat card that we get in red-black. Pretty good, kind of a better Blood Artist because you get to ping down creatures, but generally you do target your opponents, so I think this is a really good addition. These other creatures get +1/+0. I don't know how often we're attacking in this deck, but the ability to turn our Blood Artist sideways against opponents who don't have creatures is really, really nice, so I do like Judith here. Liliana, this was in the payoff section, if I remember quickly. I looked over the tags very, very quickly, and that kind of confused me. So you play Liliana, you sacrifice a creature, she transforms, and you get a pretty good creature. Now, here's the thing. I really like Liliana Defiant Necromancer. The +2 to each player discards a card works well if you can do it turn after turn. The small amount of reanimate is very good, even though there's a lot of legendaries I think that are worth reanimating a deck like this, like Jury, which you just can't hit. But I don't see this as a payoff. This creature is just kind of like a value creature while you're kind of building up your deck. And with that in mind, I don't know to what degree I really like her here. I think she's one of the weaker ones. She's 3 mana. It's nice that she makes a 2/2. It's nice that she slow reanimates creatures, most likely reanimating the first creature and then having to +2. She's okay. I think, once again, there's an umbrella that I want to throw on the cards in this deck where it's like, cool card, but maybe not the right place for it. So Liliana, I do love this card, but I just think it's one of the weaker cards in the deck. Mahadi is a card that I always have problems with, but if people want to play it, I will never stop them. I just find that often it doesn't do anything. When Mahadi is out, like they're win more, right? When they're out and you have the means to sacrifice a bunch of creatures and then keep Mahadi till the end of the turn without them getting, Swords to Plowshare or something, yeah, you get a bunch of treasure, which is pretty good. But I've never had that happen. It just doesn't come up. My opponent, maybe I play against opponents that are too aware of this, or I just draw Mahadi at the wrong time. If you're behind, this card is very, very bad. If you're neutral, this card is okay. You might get 1 or 2 treasures out of it. But if you are ahead, this card is really, really good, and you don't need it at that point. So for me, this is an easy cut, but this is a card that a lot of people like. So I see it all the time. I assume people like it. I see them all the time, but I never see people talking about its praises. So I don't know. Mayhem Devil, absolutely one of the reasons to go red in what I would call aristocrat decks of any kind, but like not just the creature-based ones. But here, a phenomenal creature, very, very strong. Great to see it. Midnight Reaper, very, very good. A bit trickier here because a lot of our creatures are going to be tokens through the Saprolings. However, still, I think this is pretty good. I'm going to be adding card draw, but I think this is fine. Playcrafter, kind of just okay here. Something I talk about sacrifice effects, they work just like those ETB discard effects. You want a critical mass of them. Aristocrat decks are all about critical mass. It is not about the individual cards, it is about the quantity of cards. It doesn't matter which Blood Artist you have, but if you have 4 Blood Artist effects, or 1 Blood Artist effect and like 200 creatures, that's how you win. And sacrifice and discard are also in the same vein. They are also critical mass strategies. So Playcrafter gets better the more Playcrafter effects that you play, with the first one being just okay. Here, I don't think it's too bad. I think most of the time you're not going to be able to use this pretty well, because if this is the card you're reanimating every single time, you're actually going to be kind of, once again, you're going down a card every time. You're going to play it, you're going to sacrifice it, and then you got to get your commander back into the graveyard, and then you got to reanimate both, sacrificing the Saproling, and then you got to do it again and again. And that's a lot of mana to be doing this and a lot of time, and I feel like you could do better. But as the first Playcrafter effect, well, it has the name of the effect, it's a really good one. So I think this is fine here, but once again, I feel like we're playing this instead of playing like General Card Draw or something, which I would prefer. Myco Tyrant, this is another card that we have, we'll be adding here. And I actually really do like this, because this is one of those cards that I would say, yeah, this is a lot, but this is also exactly what we want, right? This is a creature that synergizes with our commander and synergizes with our aristocrat ways by creating more bodies to sacrifice later. Now, you have to remember that Descend does not hit tokens. It says card. So you can sacrifice as many tokens as you like, none of them will trigger Descend. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, generally, you should be able to get 2 to 3 creatures out of this per turn cycle, while it just being a pretty decent creature on its own. Now, do I like this and I don't like Mahadi, where Mahadi and this creature is really good when you're ahead and just okay when you're in the mid game? Yeah, that's probably a fair statement. I think the inherent synergy makes it just a little bit better, but I'm checking my biases right now. With that in mind, I would test this heavily. I think it can be very, very good, but in neutral, I think it's just going to be okay. I'm going to suggest a few more, at least one, I think, non-token creature to sacrifice. Namely, the one I didn't suggest is Bloodghast, because it's a bit more expensive, but definitely a card that it would be worth putting in here. Those kind of cards make this a lot easier. If you have Bloodcasts, if you have other creature cards that come from the graveyard back over and over again that don't cost the full like commander 4 mana ability to do so, Myco Tyrant will trigger a lot more often, and you will get more fungi in order to sacrifice. So in that case, I do like it. I guess the final thing I'll say about that is Mahadi makes you mana in order for you to continue building your game plan, whereas Myco Tyrant gives you 1/1s that is your game plan, you know, creatures to sacrifice or to kill off to get drain triggers. So I do like Myco Tyrant more. Now we're getting into some stuff that I do have very strong opinions on. Body Lunder just feels very, very clunky here. There's a lot of, you know, like whenever another non-token creature you control dies, non-token's a lot here. Once again, we have to sacrifice actual creatures, and all we get out of it is a connive, which doesn't always work the way we want to. When it dies, you reanimate another creature, a non-rogue, which I don't think is a problem, but you reanimate a creature from the graveyard, which means you're sacrificing the creature to reanimate another creature, to put this in the graveyard, to then reanimate it, to sacrifice it, to put another creature. Like, I get the value, but it's clunky, right? It's slow. It's oftentimes the mana you're spending to do this. If you could just play like an extra Blood Artist or 2 that turn, would be a lot stronger, right? Whereas this is a lot of work. You have to have the right cards in your graveyard. You have to have all your sack outlets. You have to have the mana, and you're just getting a little bit of incidental advantage, not including like if you have Blood Artists, sure, you get extra advantage that way, but your deck always have Blood Artists, so I don't know. I feel like it's a lot of hoops for a card that just doesn't do as much as you'd like. I will have better cards at lower mana to do things like this. Jaxis, the Troublemaker. I really, really like Jaxis, but once again, here it's a little tricky. Jaxis is really powerful with Blitz and creates Blitz copies of creatures. I want to just say yes. every time I play them, I'm a little disappointed, but they're a card I really, really like. So I'm gonna say keep playing this. This is a really good red Aristocrats card, but it is a bit clunky. So play it, see how it feels, especially at the higher mana, it can be tricky. Keth deck. Keth deck is too much. If they're not your commander, it's too much work. So you have to, you have to, first of all, you have to have this creature out. It has to last to the end step. You have to have another creature to sacrifice, and then you get a card that's not even a legendary, which is a lot of your good cards are legendaries. Put it on the battlefield and the rest at the bottom. You're probably just gonna get one of your 1-drops, right? Almost universally. And if you get a token, if you sacrifice a token, you're not even getting anything from it, right? So this is a card I really, really don't like here. This is very, very clunky. If you don't build around it, this is a card where you try to have a single 1-drop in your deck that you always want to get, right? That's how this card works. Or a single, or you really curate your low drops in order to guarantee getting the right card. This is just like, where is it? The Dinosaur Egg, right? You want it so every 1 or 2 drop in your deck, but this is not even just creatures. This has to be every 1 or 2 drop. But specifically, Keth, you have to make it so every non-legendary 1 or 2 drop is exactly what you want every game, which is doable. Don't get me wrong, it's very, very doable. But it will bend the deck into something it might not be right now. And for that, I think it's clunkiness it's worth just getting rid of. Let's see what's next. Payless Plunderer, fantastic card, very easy. Poison Tip Archer, once again, very, very strong card. Rankle, fine. Fine. Once again, this is just a card that's just good, but also just, I'm not quite sure why it's here. You hit someone, you pick all 3 modes, and then you move on. It's a creature that for the rest of the deck doesn't need combat. This creature needs combat. This is 4 mana for an ability. At least it has haste, but once again, do you want to reanimate this? Probably not. Rankle just a little clumsy in my eyes, and therefore, with that in mind, I don't particularly like them at 4 mana, and I don't think they really help you on your game plan. Skyfisher Spider, I agree. I think this is the synergy is cute, but I just don't think it's particularly worth it. 4 mana, sacrifice a creature, destroy target non-land. In black and green, you have 4 mana, destroy target non-land, and then get a land the next turn, like the Saga. Or you have destroy creature at that same mana thing and get a land tap. You have much, much better cards than this. The fact that this is a 3/3 and it can attack is fine. The fact that it gains you life is fine, but then you can't use it again. So instead, you're probably just going to leave it in the graveyard so you can keep reanimating it and then keep blowing up permanents. I'm just not too impressed. I think this is an easy cut. At 4 mana as well, this is a lot of hoops to jump through. Smothering Abomination is great. Vindictive Lich is fun, but I am always a bit doubtful of this ability. What's really nice about this is it kind of combines all of those cards that I said was... So this is what makes it good and also what makes it bad. Remember I said about how sacrifice, discard, these and aristocrats, these are all critical mass strategies, right? We want a certain number of these effects for them to be good. And it's funny because Vindictive Lich offers you all 3 separately. So there are some board states where you can reanimate Vindictive Lich over and over and over again and get some really, really good value out of it. But there's also board states where Vindictive Lich just doesn't do anything. Whether it could be no one has creatures, no one really has cards, which you're winning anyways, why do you need this card? But think about it like this. Imagine a scenario, and I think this is a believable scenario. You're early mid-game, your opponents all have creatures, your opponents all have cards, and your opponents aren't at 0 life, right? Or a life total you can burn them down from. Let's say they're each at mid-30s, right? This is just a regular mid-game of a lot of Commander games, right? What do you do? What do you do with this card, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to target your 3 opponents, right? So let's just say A gets sacrifice a creature, B gets discard, C gets lose 5 life. Then you reanimate Vindictive Lich. What are you going to do now? Well, you actually can't switch the targets because you want to hit the same, especially with discard because 2 is a lot, but you want to hit the same player with the same abilities, because the player that discarded 2 cards may have discarded 2 cards or a card and a card they don't care about, and they had to discard a kind of good card. But you hit them with the second discard 2, and all of a sudden, bam, their hand's almost gone, and they only have the best card in their hand left. Same thing with sacrifice. The player who has 4 creatures is sacrificing their worst creature, but you hit them with that again. Okay, they're sacrificing their second worst creature. Now it's getting a little better. 5 life, 5 life. You're just happy to hit anyone with it. But do you notice what's happening here? You have to keep targeting the same players with the same abilities. And what you're kind of doing unintentionally is annoying those players who have the other axes to hit you on. So the opponent whose board is wiped has a bunch of cards in hand to just channel at you because you've taken out their board. The opponent who has no cards in hand has a board to pressure you with, and your opponent who has lower life now is probably just a little annoyed and will target you one way or another. You've kind of incentivized your opponents to take you out of the game, and you haven't really taken them down. Like, you haven't really stopped their ability from stopping you. You've just kind of incidentally annoyed them in ways that hopefully it's very straightforward who you should target with each way. But if it's not, you've just gotten the ire of the table. I'm spending a lot of time on this card. I think this is a card that when it's good, it's really good, and when it's okay, it's awful. And for a deck like this, I just don't see it being here. I think it's very win more. It's very like the stars align, and it's just going to get you killed a lot more than it is going to win you games. So to me, this is an easy cut. I think I'm spending so much time on it because it's a card I profoundly like. Like, I really like this card. It's such fun. It's a Lich. It's black. I love it. And so I have to kind of convince myself on why it's bad too. All right, Cavalier of Night. This is fine. We can probably do better. I do like all its modes. It's pretty strong. I think this is a pretty strong card. You can keep it for sure. Chaos Defiler, I think this is definitely a better reanimation target because you get 2 triggers from it. You put it into play, it triggers, it dies, it triggers, so on and so forth. But I don't actually know the power of this card in multiplayer. It's a card I see in cubes sometimes because it's very, very strong in one-on-one. But in multiplayer, it's kind of like, which one are you going to get? This can be very good, or this can be just okay. This is particularly bad when you're trying to take out that one player who is ahead. So let's just say I'm arch enemy and you're using this to try to stop me. Well, you have a 66% chance of messing with your 2 opponents that are probably trying to help you defeat me instead of defeating me. So when you're behind, this card is so bad, but it's not the worst card, so I think it can stay pretty easily. It is a fun card, works with Squee very well. Gary, fantastic, keep Gary. Puppeteer Clique, I think we're getting to, we spent quite a long time on these cards, but we're getting to the end of the creatures, and I'll skim through the others really fast. So here's the thing, we have a lot of 5-drops, and Puppeteer Clique feels like the weakest one. It's this is a card I used to play a lot, and I do really, really like it. But if you don't know what your opponents are playing, this card is kind of suspect. Like, at most, you're getting like an extra creature to sacrifice per turn cycle, every time you are able to persist this creature. And if you have the means to keep reanimating, it's very, very good. However, you're kind of dependent on your opponents. So I like it. I just think there are better cards for this deck. This card is very, very good, but a bit clunky. I'm gonna keep repeating that a little bit. Sir Conrad, fantastic. Massacre Worm, I think this is great here. Zaitora, I think this is fine. I wish we had reanimation, other reanimation, and I think maybe I should have suggested that. Maybe I have more suggestions than I thought. I wish we played Reanimate or Animate Dead, because this is a really, really good card to get into our graveyard, but if we can't get them out of our graveyard, we're going to have a hard time. The other thing is the creature's power. I think our general power in this deck is pretty low, so it's not really ideal. Is it any target or opponent? Any target. Okay, no, this is good. No, I'm happy. This is a very good card. Okay. I just wish we had more support for it if we had a few more reanimations. Let's go through the rest real fast. A lot of these I like. Bankrupt in Blood is incredibly greedy. 2 creatures is a lot. There's just gonna be a lot of situations where you don't have 2 creatures to sacrifice. Like if you just have your commander in the Sapperling, you actually want to keep the Sapperling. So this is very, very clunky. I'd like to cut that. Culling Ritual is fine. It just hits the majority of our deck. And though in some situations that'll be good, there's a lot of situations where you're going to be losing your Blood Artist effects, and you don't want to do that. You want to slowly sacrifice all your creatures, leave the Blood Artists. The fact that you can't, like, you just lose them immediately is just kind of clunky here. I'd rather you just play Toxic Deluge. Making an example is great. Village Rites, once again, not sure why it's just one colorless. Fine card here. Bitter Triumph's fine. Rush Rebirth, a little win more, but fine. Terra Sunder's great. Arcane Signet as our only mana rock feels a little weird, but I'm going to introduce more ramp. Tarian's Journal is great. I really, really like it. Ashnod's Altar, fantastic. Bitter Reunion is fine. I don't know how much that haste matters, but it's fine. Goblin Bombardment is fantastic. And Necrogenesis is just kind of okay. I just don't feel like you have the mana to be throwing around to be using this ability, so I would rather be practically anything else. Finally, before we go to additions, I do feel like you could play at least 1 or 2 more lands. You do go up to 6 mana and 36. I'd go up to 37. I think 37 would be fine. Okay, all that to get into additions. There's a few I didn't think of. I'm going to do real fast. I think the Not Dead Yet or After All. I always forget. After All. The Not Dead After All cycle could be really, really powerful in this deck. I would probably play this and play like Undying Malice, and I think that would be enough. As I mentioned before, Animate Dead or Reanimate. Both of these are just really, really good here, and I think you should absolutely play them. You got to have other ways to reanimate these creatures. You can't Victimize is good, but you need a few other ways to do this and take advantage of the fact, like if Zaitor is in the graveyard, you want them back out as fast as possible. Then let's go into our other additions. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is a few, like something I've been saying a lot is I feel like the fundamentals are missing. And there's a few like just general Aristocrat cards I think you should just be playing no matter what. So I want to start there and I want to see what we can get. So Reassembling Skeleton, just a really, really basic one. I said also Bloodghast, which I'll also put here. These are just nice because they're just creatures that repeatedly come back from the graveyard, and we can just take advantage of those in addition to our tokens, just to get a few more Aristocrat triggers here and there. It works really well with like our self-mill or our discard out of our hand, just having something that works on the plan that we have without needing our commander to do a lot. So both of these cards are strong, and I think I would add them in as soon as I can. And then a few Aristocrats cards. These are just the general ones, right? Bastion of Remembrance is just really, really powerful. Gives you the creature to sacrifice, but also just generally says whenever a creature dies, each opponent loses life. Hard to interact with. Very, very nice card. Vindictive Vampire is one that we're missing that I think is worth playing. It's just another 4 mana one that hits all of our opponents. Very, very strong. A little clunky because it is 4 mana, but you have the means to reanimate them, and the damage they add is very, very worthwhile. Then one more in black that I just think is really, really nice here is Krav the Unredeemed. It's another sacrifice outlet, but it works a little differently, where you're sacrificing a ton of creatures, like X creatures, and then you get a lot of cards and a lot of life from it, and then there's just a bunch of +1/+1 counters that go on to Krav, which is just fine. But this is a really good card, especially as like another sack outlet, but also as a draw engine. This card just like combines a lot of things you want all together, and for that reason I think it is a fun card that you can play in these kind of Aristocrats decks. It's a very good reanimation target because once they're out, you can kind of, because it can target itself in a, well, it doesn't target, but it can sacrifice itself. So you can throw out Krav, then pay a black, sacrifice Squee and Krav, putting them back into your graveyard, drawing 2, triggering your Blood Artists, and then you can immediately reanimate them after, right? Not at instant speed because of how Squee works, but on your turn, which is a little extra value here and there, which I really like. And that's not including the fact that you could be sacrificing a ton more cards, right? And if you're drawing like 5 off of this, it's a very, very good card. Then another thing, before we get to some spicy stuff, these are the fundamentals. We need some card draw, and we need some card draw that is not necessarily associated with sacrificing our permanents, even though one of them will be. Knight's Whisper is just generically very, very good card. You'll just be very happy to draw 2 for 2. And Read the Bones is kind of one of my favorites to just kind of lean into. Just scry 2, draw 2, you lose 2. Very, very strong card. Here, we can also play Rowan's Grim Search. This is something we need to sacrifice a permanent to, but still, the fact that it lets us kind of pseudo-surveil, look at the top 4, and then we can actually throw all 4 of them into the graveyard is just very good for your deck, getting more of your targets in there, and then drawing whatever is left, or drawing 2 new cards that we haven't seen. Very, very strong. The instant speed makes it very powerful. The card draw is very powerful. And at worst, it's just draw 2, lose 2. It's just divination at instant speed. I didn't include Necropotence or Phyrexian Arena. That's up to you. I don't think the deck needs them. But if you want to power up the deck in those definitely having a ton of card draw, Necropotence is always the way to go in black. But we're 3 color. I just don't think we need it, so I didn't suggest it. All right, speaking of colors, this is another thing that I think is just generally kind of missing from the deck, and it is mana ramp. We are in 3 colors. We should be taking advantage of the fact that one of them is green. Now, this doesn't necessarily speed up our main on the board game plan, but getting the mana to cast our spells is really important, and you're playing a single mana rock, which I think is kind of a mistake here, especially when we can play the full suite. I think you're already playing Nature's Lore. Let's just see real fast. You're playing Nature's Lore, and I think that's it. Dig Up finds you a basic land. Okay. So we have access to green. We should be playing these, right? At least you could play Farseek because it'll grab all your shocks or any kind of non-green land. 3 Fizzits can also grab dual typed lands. Rampant Growth grants a land. If you play the full 4, I think that's good enough. After that, I think there's some other ones you can play at 2 mana, you could Sakura Tribe Elders there, but I think these should be fine. Just helping you get your colors, helping you get your game plan going. And remember, in a lot of these decks, the backup plan is just to be casting things, right? Or Squeeze taking 4 mana, so we want more mana either way. So having these in our deck is just really, really nice. All right, let's get to the fun ones. So Jund is not a color that you usually see in Aristocrats, so there's a lot of really good cards that people don't tend to think of, and that's why I'm here to help you. A new one that's recently happened is Zoyowa, Lavaton. Zoyowa is a card that really, really catches my eye, because once again, we're talking about discard a card, sacrifice a permanent, or 3 damage. These are the same 3. This is the Vindictive Lich problem, right? But what I really like about this, it's the consistency of it. Zoyowa doesn't require to be the one being sacrificed and reanimated. They just need to be on the board where cards are going to your graveyard, which is really easy for you to do. Remember, no tokens. But that's every end step your opponent is facing this choice. And after 2 or 3 of these, it's gonna start mattering. Sacrifice a permanent is a lot tougher because it gives them more options, but also means when they don't have creatures, it's asking them to sacrifice lands or artifacts or enchantments, which once again is usually more expensive than creatures. So they might want to discard a card. And if they don't do either of that, they're going to take 3 damage. Your opponents are always going to take the best deal for them. Don't get it wrong. This card won't do the same kind of crazy plays as the Lich because you can't pick which one they do. However, the idea is just how often it happens over and over and over. And every time they don't pick 3 damage, which they will, you are going up a card. And you're going up a card by 3. Now, I said they will. They'll almost always pick the 3 damage until they don't. And the best way to just make them not do that is to play the deck you're playing. You're on Aristocrats. Their life totals actually go down very, very quickly and very consistently. Zoyowa works so well with that, and that pressure of picking the right target is very, very hard. Very hard. It's very heavy, right? They have to keep thinking, and the more your opponents are thinking, the more mistakes they're going to be making. Finally, after all that, if they target Zoyowa, the fact that you can just reanimate them with Squee, fantastic. Very, very good card. I think this is one of the best additions we got from recent sets for this deck. I say recent sets. This commander hasn't been out for that long, but still, one of the best cards. Another one that I love to suggest when we're playing green and Aristocrats is Evolutionary Leap. This is another sacrifice outlet that does cost mana, but that is just so good. What this does is you pay a green, you sacrifice a creature, you flip cards until you name a creature, until you find a creature, and it goes into your hand. This is so much better than like that Phyrexian creature, many others. The creature does not go into play, and it costs mana to do this, but it gives you the protection from board clears, from exile. It gives you something to do with extra mana and creatures when it is like anytime you are behind, and that makes this card so good. And when you're ahead or at neutral and you need a sack outlet, this is a sack outlet that draws you a card, right? It draws you a creature every single time. So this card is so good. I think it's criminal that it's just like 40 cents, or actually that's not true. I'm really glad it's 40 cents, but it's criminal that this card doesn't see more play. I think it is just fantastic. And especially if creature tokens, I play this in Patra Aristocrats, and the ability to turn those snakes into like the top, I don't know, 5-6 creatures of my deck is amazing. So absolutely recommend this. The other green-black card that always needs to be in Aristocrats is Moldervine Reclamation. I think I would easily switch out the Midnight Reaper, or if you just want more, play this as well into here. This is just a stupid card. I wish, like, this is one of those cards that I really feel like you need to play with it at least once to really appreciate how stupid this card is. You just draw so much of your deck so quickly, especially like, yes, in the turns that you're going off, you're going to win with this card because you're constantly drawing into the next cards to keep the combo going or keep the sacrifices going. But at neutral, as long as you have one creature and you're behind, you know, as long as you're able to play creatures and your deck is half creatures, you're going to be just eating up all the cards and getting so far ahead. I 100% recommend this card. I think it's very powerful. Finally, I think this is one of the last two cards that I thought was this might be the last card, but something that I thought was interesting that this deck should be playing, and it's Sprout Swarm. When I say I'm taking out Necrogenesis, I do appreciate the fact that it is our only Saproling creator, and therefore Sprout Swarm is something that's on my mind. This is another Aristocrats card that can also work really well with any form of tokens, but especially in our Saproling deck, where the whole idea of this card is as long as you have one green creature and 4 other creatures, you can cast this by tapping them down and put it back into your hand. You can do this as many times as you have, you know, the first one is 5 creatures, the next one is 4 of any color because you created a green Saproling. So I think it's, how does it work? The 5 gives you 1, 9 gives you 2, and so on and so forth. Then 13 gives you 3, etc. Now, if you have that many creatures, you're probably winning the game, so take that as you may, but the ability to just get a free creature every now and then to work with your whole your commander's clause that it needs to be a Saproling that goes in the graveyard is very good, even to the point that sometimes you're willing to just cast this for the 2 just so you can get that game-winning reanimation. But overall, I think this card is very good, and you're gonna have a lot of fun playing it. And yes, I did have one, and I did remember this. This is the one sack outlet that I think is very much so missing out of your deck. Now, this card is a little higher in budget. It's close to $10, but I thought I'd suggest it anyways. Altar of Dementia is just so strong here, right? It is target player, you sack your creatures and you mill your deck. So it does both things that your deck wants. It wants to reanimate creatures from the graveyard, so this puts the creatures in the graveyard from the battlefield, but also from your deck. You do this a few times, especially with your bigger creatures, and all of a sudden your graveyard is stocked and you can do whatever you want from it. So this is a card that I think is very notably missing. And I think that's it. It's funny, I was just before I made this video, I was telling my wife that I was excited that I felt like my videos were getting shorter. Foolish me. Yeah, this I really do like the deck. I think I might have been a little hard on it in the sense that I feel like it's a little clunky and a few of the pieces feel like they're sticking out in weird ways. But I mean, the core of it's there, right? I think we just need a little bit of a cleanup. We gotta just pick some cards that I just think don't really make a lot of sense, like Skirt Prospector and a few others that I think we can just do a lot better with some generic good cards that are for these colors, especially for Aristocrats. Get some of our fundamentals in, and I think that'll improve the power of the deck dramatically. And then after that, you can send me another version of this deck and we can take a look and be a little more specific. Definitely when it comes to power level, we have a lot to play with, a lot of directions we can go into, and we have a lot that we can kind of edit this deck into being we can make it like really, really strong if you want to, or we can keep it kind of low. There's a lot to do, and I really like it. Thank you so much for sending the deck. Thank you. I'm going to try pronouncing this again. Gamusino? I hope that's correct. Thank you so much for the deck. I really do like Slimefoot and Squee. I'm very, very happy to have another chance to look and talk about that. And obviously Aristocrats is phenomenal. Yeah, thank you and good luck. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there is a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.